this kind of segues us really, really nicely into introducing Beth, Marki, and Andrew Feig from JP Morgan. And I've been working a lot with them and getting to hear like what they're doing with their journey. And I'm really excited for you all to hear this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Beth to tell you a little bit about herself.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Beth Marki, obviously. I am the product owner for cloud financial management inside of JPMC. Essentially, we are the technology arm of the FinOps program internally. Let's see, how did I get here on this path? The winding path that I took was very much through corporate finance. So Joe and I probably have a little bit more of a conversation to have there. Many firms under my hat doing that from a strictly finance perspective, and eventually took a left turn into the technology organizations by way of business operations, vendor management, and really getting close to what those contracts were, and eventually moved into what does optimization look like. And it was everything from all infrastructure, from on-prem, and as people moved into private and public cloud environments. So it's a little of all of the above.
Beth, congrats on all those certifications. I saw them in the finance, but I'm feeling like we're missing a badge next to your name here.
We are indeed. I had a couple of other certifications to work on first, but this one's up next. Peer pressure is on. If we can go to next slide, or let's have Andrew do a quick introduction and then we'll kick off.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right. So Andrew Feig, I run a cloud engineering center of excellence for a line of business inside JP Morgan called Employee Experience and Corporate Technology. Think of it as the kind of economies of scales function for JP Morgan. So HR, legal, audit, real estate, those types of functions. And in my we call it a practice, my center of excellence, right? We do all things cloud, right? So obviously, in addition to enabling the applications to move to public cloud, we also do training as well as FinOps. So I kind of got into this through just trying to provide the complete service to my application owners to enable them to get to public cloud in the right way.
Indeed. There we go. Perfect. So this is really foundational to how we work. This is a good representation of all of the moving pieces underneath the covers. The way that we think about how we got to a FinOps practice inside of the firm, it was very much a finance effort in early days. They were very forward thinking in terms of, we really want obviously people to be thinking about all the cost transparency and how we manage those costs and how do we work on tools, et cetera, which is where we came into the party. And those foundations have been set for a very long time, and we're working on having those FinOps practices and centers of excellence that Andrew's talking about, having them be in all the individual business units. So the goodness obviously comes from a federated model where everybody is able to contribute. We have everybody represented from the architecture community, engineering, bringing in our F&BM folks, which you just saw represented from a training perspective, obviously. And it really is that shared responsibility model that has made it a groundswell. I think that the closer the engineering community has come to viewing it less of an us and them and more of a together, it has really built a lot of trust. You guys are looking at common data, have common concerns. It has really brought it together from a business perspective. And I think that has changed a lot and frankly added a lot to our momentum. We'll have some great examples of, how we get that to be tangible, but that's really overall how we work individually. If we could take a look at the next slide.
Hey, Beth, I love that you mentioned the not having the us versus them. And that was one of the things we highlighted on the last summit, where a lot of the materials created in like 2019 around the space through like engineers as other. Just a quick question on how have you done better integration and partnership with those folks to further that, integration versus us versus them culture?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. One is bring them as a part of the problem. They'd like to solution, right? They'd like to build things and think about how that works, but bring them into that conversation so that it's really a lot more of that give and take. There's tools that we're offering in center. We make sure that we're always working for improved transparency, but a lot of how we made that progression was having folks come to the table of, I want to see this, I need to see this, here's an idea how we do it. And sometimes, frankly, we have our partners throughout the firm developing something to give us that kickstart and next advance. So it's bringing them to the table to help solution that as well.
Makes sense. Thanks.
So this is a little bit of that engagement framework that I was sort of alluding to. The closer we get to really understanding everybody's individual business objectives, that's really fed into what, frankly, our roadmap ends up looking like. Understanding where they are in their business cycles as they go through modernization journeys, and really speaking to them at that level, but they're all in those different spots. So this continuous circle of back and forth conversation that says, these are the things that we need and the things that we're working towards. If we actually have that common language, it just gets a little bit easier. So that's that continuous cycle. Next page, please. So I wanted to make sure that we were hitting on how we actually engage with the community. This is one of the ways, and this is very specific to the engineering community, although frankly, that's come a long way on the finance side as well. We've got some stellar folks that could, knock it out of the park from a conversational perspective, and they're very used to this. This is a simple slide that many of us have seen in probably different forms, but we use this as a conversation starter. Very often they come to us in the very beginning and say, how do I figure out how to charge, how much is it going to cost me to do X or Y or Z? Very often it's before they even start that journey. So everybody lands somewhere on this continuum in that case. Maybe you're already on it, you're still in your own on-prem environment and you're trying to figure out, do I lift and shift? Do I throw it over? How do I get there? Because everybody's always pressuring us from a speed perspective. We're trying to elongate that conversation and say, these are actually all the things that you need to think about and consider. And if we're doing it well, we're getting you there to that thought process much earlier in the process from a design perspective. You can have a conversation and tell somebody they should pick the right instance size, but it's very different from moving along that continuum and saying, what does it mean? How do I improve elasticity? What does it mean to optimize my storage? So it's a door opener conversation for us. Next, please. Now, depending upon the community that we're reaching out to, now, sometimes it's the very basics of, what is FinOps? What does it mean here? And obviously, this is a representation. None of this information is new to anybody on this call. But depending upon that community that you're reaching out to and getting that foundational understanding, that's a huge paradigm shift. You're moving from that fixed static infrastructure cost, and you're moving to something where, frankly, the faucet's always on. That's a whole new idea. It's a whole new level of responsibility. It scares the bejesus out of every finance person out there for all the obvious reasons, which is why we're talking it out here. Every CIO that understands that their whole entire environment and what infrastructure responsibility they have, it very much changes as they move through that cycle. So it's bringing that up as a topic. This is one of the ways that we do that. Next slide, please.
I feel like we need to pull that as a quote, that the variable cost scares the bejesus out of finance people. That's
it does.
So much truth there.
Now, this is another basic, but again, it really depends on the audience. This is referenced a lot in what I showed 2 slides ago, but it's another way, and it is starting to allude at the idea that it really is that continuous cycle. It isn't something that, frankly, is ever really done. That's how we talk about optimization here. It's an ongoing practice. And this is really where we start to hit out on what is elasticity. How do we do that? How do we give them the tools and knowledge to make it an easy part of their day 2 activities? So next, please. All right, so this is another slide that, frankly, you could spend just extraordinary amounts of time on. But another part of the conversation that we've been trying to have in front of our engineering and technology community, which is frankly enormous. If you think about it from JPMC level, we have 55,000 technologists. So our ability to speak their language and bring it home to them in a meaningful, detailed way is extremely important. So I might get them at that high level conversation first, and then they're going to come back and say, well, how do I make that tangible? What does that actually mean for me? What do you mean when you say I have to pick the right size? Why do I need to avoid over provisioning? And what are the steps that are related to that? We talk This opens up the conversation about pricing models, putting on the table the things that we do top of house versus the things that are 100% their responsibility, like spot instances, and gives them a ton of opportunities, and we spread that knowledge. And then we really go down the individual pieces of what does good look like for elasticity? What tool can I put in your hand to make sure that we're turning stuff on the weekends? We clean up the old crusty stuff. And then it's a continual evolution of those things. So each of these are individually deep topics, but sort of opens up a lot of eyes when we get to this page.
I feel like this is one of those slides that if we were in a room, people would be taking a photo of. Before people ask, we don't share the actual slides, but there will be a recording going up later on YouTube, so you can revisit this. There's a lot of good stuff on here.
Perfect. There you go, Andrew.
Sorry, Andrew, you are still muted. 1 second. I think be good now. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So these are some things that I've done in my line of business, right? So I work very closely with Beth on all the things she talked about, but these are the things that I've done with my my Cloud Center of Excellence with my business to get things moving, right? So one of the first thing is an application owners, first time moving to public cloud, or maybe they've done it a couple of times, setting expectations for them, right? So we actually created an application owner handbook. This kind of is, let's say, a quick summary, I would call it, maybe 10-page document or PowerPoint or page that kind of explains what the expectations are of them now being on public cloud and how to do the basics, right? Here's how to check your bill. Here's how to set up dashboarding so you can see all your accounts. Here's how I set up budget alerts, right? So we want to, and this is a famous quote, right? It's easy to make things complex, but it's hard to make them simple. And that's what we're trying to do here, right? So they don't have to spend a lot of time doing the basics because when they're in their dev environments, right, they're just getting started. They should start to do the right behaviors, right? So when they get to prod, this isn't the first thing they're starting with, right? And then the rest of these things I would say are kind of in the handbook, but they're things that we found that really help, right? So all the public cloud providers have calculators. We found from feedback that they were very complex, especially if you're doing a simple estimate. So we actually built this an easy kind of quick way for them to do t-shirt sizing in Excel, right? So it's kind of a simple way to do that. And that gave them the estimates so they could begin their financial planning and do that kind of work. We talked a lot about training, right? So what we've seen is teams that have been trained and certified in FinOps have a lot better experiences. They understand things more, right? We're not actually doing the training on the job. So one of the things we've done too is made simple videos of some of the tasks we want them to do, right? So how to turn a light switch on, for example. We've created videos of those. And then email is not always the greatest medium, but we actually created a monthly meeting to hear feedback. What are blockers? What are some of the friction points? As well as an email list to here's the latest and greatest, what you needed to know, right? It isn't meant to be the main method of communication, but it creates that community. And when you hold the meeting, people can start comparing notes and they email each other. Or if you have Symphony or other ways to create group meetings and teams, I recommend doing that. In terms of OKRs, so to make this real, right, we actually publish FinOps OKRs in our balanced scorecard. So everybody understands what expectations are, right? What percent of our capabilities will be automated, right, versus manual tasks. How much of coverage will it be, let's say, for light switches and janitors, so things you're getting shut off. And then you just mature them, right? But you got to start early in that space. Otherwise, people don't, realize they're getting graded. And then when they do get graded, they may not like the outcome. And then number 6, this is probably the hardest one, and we're doing a lot of work here. Actually build the FinOps solutions into your engineering processes, right? So as we automate and we build, Terraform-based solutions and other using other automation languages, we build the solutions right in there. And of course, you can manage, as Beth said on the last slide, manage services as much as you can, right? Because you get to use exactly what you want. And then lastly, I think a lot of people wait to start having the unit economics discussion. We have a massive unit economics practice for our private cloud and private things, but it wasn't really top of mind for public. So I would say don't wait, get on that journey as soon as you can. Keep it simple, but I think you need to get people in that mode because that really will help, save a lot of time. Back to that, it's easy to make things complex, hard to make them simple, so they can really understand how to track their bill and when do they need to really pay close attention to the details and when they do not.
JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.